Hi, this is Larry Green talking to you about Touch for Health. And Touch for Health is a system of taking care of ourselves and healing ourselves using self-responsibility. And one of the tools that we teach people is something called cross crawl. And you may have heard that there's all this research that the right side of the brain controls the motor movements on the left side of the body, and the left side of the brain controls motor movements on the right side of the body. That's one of the ways how the brain works. There's a number of other things that can happen where the brain isn't integrated as well as it could be, where there's not many neural pathways between the two halves of the brain, and it gets harder to do various kinds of things in life. You may find yourself challenged mentally, emotionally, physically with things, and cross crawl is a little exercise that can actually repattern the brain to lay down new neural pathways between the two halves of the brain and make it easier to do different kinds of activities. And it's pretty simple to do a basic cross crawl. You move the opposite arm and opposite leg at the same time. And doing this kind of motion activates both halves of the brain. So when I move this arm up, this part of the brain is activated. When I move this leg up, this side of the brain is activated. So when I'm doing a cross crawl movement, both sides of the brain have to work together. Now, in children and in some adults, doing cross crawl can be a little challenging. I actually have a little thing I do in my classes when I'm teaching this. And I'll say to the students, do what I do. So if you want to follow along and try this at home, you can. So just find a place to stand up and so you can kind of walk in place. And now, just kind of do a cross crawl. You can touch the opposite knee. There are some people who say that crossing the midline with your hand activates even more of the brain. And now, once you're doing this, see how quickly and easily you can switch to doing a different kind of cross-brain activity. Then come back to doing this. Then do this. And do this. Okay. Now, if you're an adult or a child and you did that little exercise, I find people fall into three categories. The first category, and it's actually the smallest percentage-wise, is people who see me do that and it's easy for them to follow along. When I switch from one form of cross crawl to another, they can switch along with me pretty quick and easy. The largest group of people, particularly among adults, find that when they see me go from doing this to doing this, they have to sort of stop for a second, pause, get their bearing, and then once they get going, their momentum takes them along. And the same thing as they switch from one version of cross crawl to another. The third group of people, they're watching me do this. They tell their brain, do this, and their body does this. Okay? It just happens for some people that way. And what that tells us for that third group of people is neurologically, the brain is challenged. There's not as many neural pathways between the two hemispheres, and so the brain finds it easier to fire sequentially, this side, then this side, then this side, then this side, rather than integrated. But if you practice doing cross crawl, even for a few minutes a day, on a regular basis, you can build up new capacity, build new neural pathways. When I teach this to people in class, particularly with a group of adults, I will tell them that the people in the third group who are the most challenged, it's not uncommon that those people say they have a hard time staying on task, staying focused. They feel a little uncoordinated physically, socially, emotionally. Now, they don't always have all of that, but those people often say, yeah, that sounds like me in some degree. If that sounds like you, I'm going to suggest that you do 2, 3, 5 minutes a day of cross crawl like this. And within 2 months, you will probably find it's easier to do cross crawl, and you'll start noticing that those things that have been challenging, staying on task, staying focused, feeling coordinated physically, emotionally, socially, seem to get easier. And you can do this even if you're elderly. You can start creating new neural pathways and help your brain be more integrated and fully working. Now, maybe 20 years ago, all the people in brain research knew for a fact that you couldn't create new neural pathways and you couldn't create new brain cells. Now we know for a fact that the exact opposite is true. So you can take this simple exercise and use it to help yourself or your kids or your family or people who struggle in various areas. You can also use it, let's say you've got an area in your life where you're feeling challenged. You can think about that challenge and do cross crawl. You may find that when you think about the thing that's challenging, it's actually harder to do cross crawl. That's just the body's way of saying, in that area, neurologically, there's some stress. We are not aligned. We don't have the resources that we could have, but you can create and build them with doing this practice on a regular basis. So give it a try. If you're successful, let us know about it. And I will tell you a quick story about this that always inspires me. I was teaching this in a class once, many years ago, and as I was teaching the students this, one of the women in the class told me about her daughter. When her daughter was in first grade, she got all D's for her first 3 report cards. And I thought to myself, you know, all D's in first grade is pretty hard to be that consistent. The teacher was probably being generous to a first grader and didn't want to give her F's. Someone came into the school system and taught that little girl in the last quarter of the school year how to do cross crawls. And she went from getting all D's on her first 3 report cards to getting all A's on her last report card. And when the mom told me that story, I thought, you know, that little girl, if nobody had ever taught her how to do this, she would have spent her entire life being told verbally and non-verbally by the system that you're slow, stupid, dumb, lazy. And all it was that neurologically, she wasn't up to speed. But you can get up to speed. And so I invite you to try it for yourself. Share this with somebody who it may be useful for. And if this is helpful for you and you'd like other ways that you can take control of your life, help yourself, improve your life, have more self-responsibility, more power, more joy, come and learn Touch for Health. It's a great system that can help you at a lot of levels by teaching you simple things to empower yourself and your family and your life. So thanks for watching.